Welcome to yet another live episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 438. I am your host, Michael. Joining me, per usual, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
We were just talking about in the pre-show how long that card was on Friday.
Oh, gosh.
We can promise we will not be on quite that long, but we will still cover it all.
And I'm still upset at how they tricked us, telling they gave the impression that the main card was gonna fight start at one time period and it ended up starting much later. Or what kind of messed up my personal schedule, but I was still able to see the fight eventually. Uh, just my little mild rant. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc. Talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science that will get discussed, if you want to find out any and all information, please go to the site, p4pboxreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, IG page, also links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, be it Anchor, be it uh, Apple Podcast, be it Spotify, uh, Google Podcasts for the time being. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you should be able to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report. If you wish to donate, Cash Me and PayPal donation links on the site. If you're looking to get your body right, or looking for a boxing specific program, please check out the links to my fitness page, Body, BODI, formerly known as Beach Body on Demand. If you are familiar with the old P90X series 1, 2, and 3, that's what I'm referring to. If you're looking for a program just to lift weights, there are programs like Lift 4, Lift More, Body Beast. If you're looking for hardcore, functional, CrossFit style workouts, there are programs like Lift 4. Excuse me, not Lift 4, but 645, 6 weeks of the work, chop wood, carry water. If you're looking for boxing specific programs, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6 week program, 3 days of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week devoted to weightlifting, or anything else in between. If you're interested in Pilates, yoga, they even got a program that's promoted that's centered around dance, even program centered around country line dancing, whatever is your vibe. Please check out Body. Take advantage of the 2 week trial, and that is for 14 days. You get free access to any and all programs, including the sample workout of the new programs that's set to hit Body later on this year. Dig deeper. Let's get things going by recapping what went down this weekend, specifically the card in Saudi Arabia. Ladies first, as always, Gail. And the main event, of course, was Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou. Now, a lot of people heading in. We previewed the fight last week. A lot of people had some concerns, quote unquote, for Joshua, given how Ngannou performed in his previous fight against Tyson Fury, uh, putting Fury down. A lot of people felt that Ngannou defeated Fury in their clash in October. They thought that Ngannou would give similar problems to Joshua. Didn't turn out to be the case. How would I sum this up? When you in there, uh, when you're an MMA guy against a seasoned pro who takes you seriously, this is what can happen. As the reason I named, and that's the reason I named this particular episode, uh, um, Joshua destroys Ngannou, because that's exactly what he did. Put him down in the final minute of the first round, uh, knocked him out, and put him down again in the second round. The finisher was just chef's kiss. Perfect right hand that had put Ngannou out before he hit the canvas. Uh, People, Gail, have been waiting to see the destructive AJ resurface. We saw it in this fight.
We certainly did. Holy boy. At the end of a very long day, which I watched starting at 7 a.m. on the West Coast all the way through, because yes, I'm in my seat for the very first fight. It actually was worth it getting all the way to the end. And as I wrote at the time, uno, dos, adios. Joshua found the target with the first right hook, found it with the second, closed the show. No shade needs to be thrown on Francis Ngannou. He dared to step out of his comfort zone, dare to be great, give this a try at the highest level, pivoting from another sport. And make no mistake, mixed martial arts is, yes, under the umbrella of combat sports, but a completely different skill set. Nobody should be under the illusion these are similar, other than this is two individuals in hand-to-hand combat. The similarities end there. Nevertheless, Ngannou, who is at the pinnacle of his own sport, risked his reputation, risked his fan appeal, risked where he stands in his own sport, where his record and reputation is absolutely unassailable, and pivoted over to boxing, where he could have easily been humiliated. Well, as it turned out in the first fight against Tyson Fury, he more than held his own. I was one of those who did think he won the fight. But it turns out, after watching him get in the ring with Anthony Joshua, he was in front of a much more prepared fighter with a game plan and a strategy. And we will have to, with the benefit of hindsight now, give a little bit less credit to Ngannou for his boxing skills and a little more blame on Tyson Fury for strolling in completely unprepared, completely taking his opponent lightly, and he shouldn't have done that. So this is the result. Francis Ngannou is now absolutely, without question, the most well-known, most accomplished 0-2 fighter in the history of boxing. Where he goes from here, we'll all be curious to see, and I dare say he will attract a big audience in his third fight, even though he's 0-2, when and if he gets there. And according to Francis in his post-fight news conference, he not only said he's not finished pursuing boxing, the way he put it was, boxing is not done with me yet. So we'll see him in the ring again. I don't think we'll see him in the boxing ring next. I think it's time for him to go notch a solid victory in PFL, where fans and the opponents are waiting for him.
At least he got paid to the tune of what, $20+ million.
Yeah, and if you saw him, anybody, in the post-fight news conference, which is available on YouTube if you want to go watch it, he was in good spirits. He seemed to be showing, at least at the time, no ill effects from that hellacious punch he took. That is the first knockdown and knockout, by the way, of Francis Ngannou's combat sports career. The very first. And yeah, he was all smiles. He also admitted that he was not in any pain because he has zero recollection of the knockout punch. Zero.
Right. That's what you call getting truly concussed, folks. Two things, Daniel. To Gail's point, it's clear now that Fury was BSing in his fight against Ngannou last fall. The other point is Joshua, under the tutelage of Ben Davison, right? Second straight fight, third straight stoppage, second straight impressive stoppage, right? Dare I say that this Joshua now is better than when the Joshua that we've seen, particularly in his last two fights, uh, a resurgence, if you will. He seems to be improving. Let's talk future here for AJ, and you can chime in as well, Gail. Eddie Hearn was lauded, praising him to the high heavens, if you will, saying he's the best heavyweight in the world. He's the baddest man on the planet, calling for a fight with Fury. AJ kind of kept it even kill. He just says he just wants to fight, but the goal is to get in the ring with the winner of Usyk and Fury. That fight is happening this May. What do you your thoughts, your reaction in terms of what we've seen from AJ, particularly in recent fights?
That's you want to say that it's been an improvement. However, you also have to look at the caliber of opponents that he's been facing. Pretty much was been one was a domestic opponent where he did not look really good in when it came to Jermaine Franklin. He did a lot better job against Otto Wallin in a fight that I picked Wallin to win because I didn't know how mentally AJ was. And unfortunately, in this fight, you got put in against somebody that is a novice when it comes to boxing, who pretty much bum rushed himself to get knocked out. Let's face the fact. That's what Ngannou did. He bum rushed himself to get knocked out. And AJ threw the right punch at the right time, got the right reaction. And that's good when it comes to highlight reels. That's good when it comes to hype packages. But again, look at the caliber opponent. The highest caliber of opponent you can say that he did in the last three fights was Wallin. And he did do a good job against there. But Jermaine Franklin, like I said, that was not a pretty fight. And when Ngannou, he had somebody that bum rushed himself to a knockout. So it's tough to really gauge what the improvement is for Joshua at this stage. Now, as far as money-wise, as far as a draw, we know that Joshua is a bit more globally known as far as notoriety and as far as like a deals when it comes to endorsements compared to somebody like Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk. What the future may hold for him, he may want to take another fight. He may want to go that IBF route and go fight Hergovich because that'll be an easy claim to the champ, an easy claim to get a belt back because we first, like I said, I still do not believe Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk were going to step foot in the ring. Fury's probably going to find a way to bullshit his way out of that fight. And Joshua might be that way. He can do it. He could just say, I can make a ton of money and I don't have to go to Saudi Arabia. We can do it in Wembley. And it would still be a really, really big domestic fight in the UK. Honestly, I do not think if it comes to a point where if they actually do fight, if Fury and Usyk actually do fight, and if the results what we think it's going to be, which is basically Usyk boxing circles around Fury, I think Joshua can afford a third loss to Usyk. We saw him mentally break down in the first two fights. Can we imagine what he does when he loses a third time? So probably immediate future, I would probably say either Wrangle. Oh, sorry about that, Go. I think that's one of my shirts. But either you position yourself to be the out for Tyson Fury, or you position yourself to take the IBF belt and just keep that, and just still leave the heavyweight picture unfiltered.
Unfortunately, halfway through, your breakdown, Daniel. Your audio became choppy, so you may have, I don't know if you may have to log off or jump back on. I don't know what the deal is. I'll go to you, Gail. Let's be honest. Even though Joshua fought and lost to Usyk twice, Joshua Fury is still the most marketable fight in the division. Um, the problem is, it's not going to happen. Fury was in attendance for this fight between AJ and Ngannou, and he claims that there's a rematch clause, excuse me, on both sides. So it looks like they're going to fight twice this year, assuming it happens. That being the case, and despite the calls for a fight between AJ and Fury, is the most reasonable, sensible, likely route for Joshua moving forward is a fight between himself and Hergovich, because if Fury and Usyk do fight twice this year, it's a high probability that the IBF is going to strip whoever wins that first fight. That would leave it vacant, and which would leave it open for the possibility of AJ and Hergovich to fight for what would be the vacant IBF heavyweight title.
100%. That's the way he needs to go. There is so much credibility in AJ being willing to take on Hergovich because he is starting to be the avoided man in the division for whatever reason. And so that's a good look for him, really good look for him. And there's a belt. There's a belt available. Friends, we talk about it all the time, but belts matter. And in the heavyweight division, that's a wonderful bargaining chip for Joshua that he might need down the line. So that's truly the number one most important viable path for him to go down. I mean, at all costs, he should take that fight. If I was advising him, I would tell him, you take that fight, even if the purse isn't quite up to your standards, as long as the playing field is fairly even and he's considered the A side, which certainly he is, that's a no miss fight. That's the way to go. And that will convince people who are still skeptical about Joshua, because you're right, the performances have been against somewhat lesser opposition since Usyk, rightfully so. He's working his way back. As impressive as that knockout was Friday, a lot of the naysayers are going to say, yeah, right, against an MMA guy who was there to get hit, who lacks the basic fundamental boxing skills, who was wide open for it. Now, AJ hit the target, but the target was there to be hit. So for those critical there, a good performance against a younger, strong fighter like Hergovich, who has looked fairly good, that will send him back on his way. And I have no interest in seeing him against Wilder at this point. Wilder is past his sell-by date, unfortunately. I think that fight, though we all wanted to see it, I just don't see any real reason for it to happen. He's already fought Joseph Parker. I don't see any reason to repeat that unless he has absolutely no other options. At one point, I might have suggested somebody like Jared Anderson, but you know what? He took himself out of consideration, and he doesn't deserve it, in my opinion. So where else is he going to go? Part of Joshua's challenge is truly that he has got arguably the best resume out of all the top heavyweights. He's run through almost everybody else. Hergovich seems like the right guy. I mean, I challenge somebody to come up with a better idea, a more viable opponent, and one that would advance his cause more than Hergovich.
Couldn't agree more. Get you back on here, right, Daniel. See if your mic is your issues with your mics are fixed. Say something right quick, please.
No, that I agree with Gail on that front. That the easier path would be to get to Hergovich, because it's a belt, it gets cachet, you're an easy A side, And let's face it, Hergovich is not at that point where you can consider him legitimate challenger for a top belt. The main situation is right now is what are you going to do if let's say they decide to throw a whole bunch of money when it comes into this matchroom Queensberry situation that the Saudis decided to build with the blood money mark. And what if that's the heavyweight challenger fight? Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. Like I said, like I mentioned, I have no confidence that Tyson Fury wants to get into the ring Alexander Usyk. That might be his way out. Lucrative fight, make money for both of them. And like I said, you don't have to do it in Saudi Arabia. You can actually do it in the UK.
I'm going back to you because I think we're going to, now that your things are cool on your end from an audio perspective, we're going to split the rest of this card up. Um, Interesting bouts that people were not talking about uh, because of the main event, but a vacant title fight turned into a vacant title fight, Daniel, uh, between Madrimov and Kurbanov. I'm mentioning this because before we get into the discussion about Zhang and Parker, because that had more interest in me. I found it quite an intriguing battle. And Israil Madrimov and Magomed Kurbanov, who vacant WBA belts. Um, Madrimov all day. He not
Yeah.
only he win, he dominated. And for me, dare I say, we have a new junior middleweight on the scene that could possibly do some damage. I watched this fight and I say to myself, I would love to see him fight Tim Tszyu. I would love to see him fight Virgil Ortiz. With Matchroom's backing, Eddie Hearn's making a strong push for him. I want to see this dude, Madrimov, in some big fights at junior middleweight. He looked terrific.
Oh man, this was a fight where where the fact that you had to pretty much put Mel out to pasture benefited from. And Madrimov had his right hand and it could have went through Kurbanov all day because that was a punch that ultimately won him the fight. It was a great performance. You can see 154 is getting ready to liven up again. And interesting enough that you mentioned Virgil, because if I'm reading my Spanish correctly, it looks like Virgil's gonna get a fight that's meant to be a setup to get a title shot at Madrimov, going through the WBA route. So you might get your wish in that front. Either way, it's probably one of the better fights of that card compared to what we got ultimately in the end.
Indeed, indeed. Um, the speed, the right hand that you mentioned, I loved his footwork. Um, I didn't know he had. I knew he was quick and had decent footwork, but I didn't know it was to that degree, right? Not the tallest, but he's athletic, and he has power in both hands. Um, like his countryman MJ Akhmadaliev, um, well-rounded, versatile fighter. And again, I want to see him again. Bring him, and Virgil Ortiz are on the zone, right? Bring him and Tim Tszyu eventually. Those are the fights. Those with Mel, you don't know what he's doing. He's now been named champion in recess. Who knows when he'll fight again? And if he does, will it be that 154 pounds? At this point, I doubt it because the Charlo brothers, again, talk about a fall from grace. Both of them, they seem to be out the picture here presently in boxing. Tszyu, Madrimov, Virgil Ortiz seems to be the future of the 154-pound division. Moved down to 126 Gale, and the return of Ray Vargas. No. But forget that. Let's get to Zhilei Zhang and Joseph Parker. Entertaining fight. It's weird. It seemed like Parker was landing more of the shots, more active, but Zhang had the power, put Parker down twice. In a rare instance, you see the fighter who gets knocked down twice getting the decision. Strangely enough, I felt that it was the right call. What say you?
It absolutely was the right call. Bravo to the judges who didn't, get their heads turned by two flash knockdowns, and they were both check hook knockdowns. It just shows you how much power Zhang has. He didn't load up on those shots. In fact, if you were watching in real time, you barely saw them happen. They were so close in. But Parker weathered both, got up, cleared his head, dusted himself off. As a veteran learns how to do when they fight and stay active. And that was what won this fight for Parker. He stayed very busy taking fights after his loss to Joe Joyce. And it made all the difference. He shook that off. He put in the rounds, both in the gym and under the lights. He went about his business. He also cleaned up his act. Joseph Parker lives life large in a lot of ways. He likes to have a good time. I don't blame him. I don't blame him. If any of you saw any of the music videos he fooled around with during the pandemic, he's just a fun-loving guy and supremely talented. But that came with some, party favors, right? And hanging around with his best friend Tyson Fury, I can only imagine. But I have heard from many people that he decided this is his last run at it. I'm cleaning up my act. Nose to the grindstone. Get busy. It paid off exactly when he needed it most. Good for him. He has deserved this. He had very early success in his career, especially when not a lot of people had their eyes on him. His early win over Andy Ruiz Jr. to win his first title, the WBO belt, has really aged well. And then he, kind of eased off the throttle a little bit, but returning to the work ethic, living a clean life, dedicating himself, and that partnership with Andy Lee, in many ways very similar to the partnership that we're seeing developed between Ben Davidson and Joshua. When the fit is right between a fighter and the trainer, magical things happen. And I am really impressed more and more with what Andy Lee has been able to do as a trainer. And if he isn't trainer of the year at some point here in the next few years, I think that would be a grave injustice to him. I really do. So Parker now, Dale has a lot more opportunities in front of him. It's going to be interesting to see what opens up for him. A little bit like Joshua, he's fought a lot of guys. He probably, unless it's the only avenue available to him, isn't going to want to fight his buddy and stablemate Tyson Fury. Plus, they've been sparring partners forever. So, it's unfortunately not a great matchup for a lot of practical reasons, but it might become one. But he's fought Joshua already. Maybe it's time for a rematch because they both looked so good. It's real hard to say, and maybe he's the guy that tests one of the up-and-coming young heavyweights at some point. I wouldn't mind if it came to it to seeing some crazy matchup like Parker and Richard Torres Jr. I think that he's too small for somebody like Jalalov, who's just a wrecking ball of a human being. And I don't think either of the two guys I just mentioned is far enough along in their careers. The heavyweight division has just gotten so much more interesting after this weekend. It really has.
Well, according to Parker during the post fight, there's a rematch clause from Zhang's side, and he was saying that Up next is a rematch of the winner.
Yeah. Well, what a guy says in the ring 30 seconds after he's won a fight is one thing. Michael, do you really want to see a rematch? Do you really? Do I'm not sure I do. And maybe it's the only thing available, but it's going to depend on whether the Saudi money is there to pay for it. And, that is almost entirely subject to the whims of one boxing fan with a really, really big checkbook.
And I hate to put this on you, Daniel, but let's save the not the best, but the worst for last, and that is the featherweight title fight between Ray Vargas and Nick Ball. Vargas, WBC champion at 126 pounds, fighting mandatory contender Ball. Look, I don't want to be dismissive or dissing this fight, but it is what it is. Um, I wasn't that interested in watching it. I did anyway. Um, Vargas doesn't look like the fighter that he was at 122 pounds, right? Significantly taller and larger than Ball. But when Ball finally decided to step in there and really let the punches go on, Vargas really had no answers. Ball dominated the second half of the fight, put him down twice. I felt that he won by a pretty significant margin, but the fight ended up in a draw. Will he get a rematch? I don't know. Do I necessarily care? No. Not to. I hate to be so indifferent towards this, but I was like, watching the fight, and I'm just like, as the result. At the result.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus Christ. This was bad, folks. This fight was just bad. I can safely say that. And it wasn't because it was boring. It was because of the fact that Ray Vargas, unfortunately, probably never didn't recover much from going down from 130, and B, he got overconfident, I think, in the height difference. Now, granted, when we previewed the fight last week, I chalked it up to have being like Conor McGregor facing Hasbulla in the height difference because it looked that drastic. But once he got into the ring, you saw what happens a lot in these differences, which is the smaller fighter has better access to the body of the taller one and can start his attack from there and able to start landing headshots. And unfortunately, the taller fighter, as we've seen with other ones, with other fighters, Leo Santa Cruz, Jared Hurds, for example, where they don't use that height advantage, that reach advantage, to try to control the ring. They sometimes use it to make the fight to a phone booth, especially when it's something that's not necessary. And for Ray Vargas, somebody who's never really been known as a knockout puncher, that was to his detriment, and it cost him with 2 knockdowns. Granted, one you can debate whether or not it was a knockdown. The second one, we all knew that was a knockdown. But then to have the fight come in with a draw, that it was bad. And I don't know what to say when it comes to Ray Vargas at this stage, because he spent time at 126. He spent time at 130. He probably can't make 122 anymore at this stage of his career and his age. So now you're stuck with between two divisions where you don't have the power to probably hold yourself up against notable challenge to champions in each division. But at the same time, you're not old enough yet where you're completely shop worn. He's in the pretty interesting spot. And hopefully they give him a rematch. It probably won't be in Saudi Arabia. It probably will be in Mexico. but that will depend upon Ray
It
Vargas.
should be in England.
Should be, but unfortunately, remember, the draw means Vargas still holds the belt. They'll still may try to make him the A side, so it's probably going to be Mexico. So that's the bad part about it. It's just like I feel bad for Nick Ball that draw got into it, but it was a bad fight overall, unfortunately.
I have no more to add. Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to some news here. Go to you, Gail, regarding Edgar Berlanga, Terrence Crawford. Rumors about who they could get in the ring next. Word on these boxing streets that Bud is in discussions and negotiations with Chris Eubank Jr. What? And also news about Berlanga. Do tell.
Well, we will tell. So now that we are aware, and it appears to be signed and sealed, although no official announcement has been put out. Posters and social media aside, those are not official announcements until you see a promoter's news release. We apparently will see Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia on May 4th in Las Vegas. Great. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I'll be there. I'll look forward to it. What that means is the two other fighters greatly rumored to be in the mix, Terrence Crawford and Edgar Berlanga, are now in search of new dance partners this week. And I hope they are hard at work at this. So the first one that pops up that's been discussed in multiple venues is that Terrence Crawford is in discussion with Chris Eubank Jr. Junior, to be clear, not senior, in case anybody's wondering. Or perhaps it's better stated that Chris Eubank Jr.'s team is talking to Terrence Crawford. So both of them are looking for a fight. Terrence has, I'm sure, still got big goals, and I do mean big, if that means he wants to move up to 168 to face Canelo Alvarez. It's this particular idea of fighting Eubank, I assume at middleweight 160, makes more sense than it might look like. Terrence Crawford has fought British fighters before. He won his first title off Ricky Burns in Scotland, in enemy territory. He likes fighting in the UK. It's possible that the fight would be done there, where it would be a far bigger seller than it would here in the United States. Although Crawford as the A side is going to get to determine where he wants to fight. And it would be an interesting test case for him, how he feels fighting in a higher weight division without the kind of threat faced by the very top man in the division, 3 above Crawford, Canelo Alvarez at 168. Now, obviously, the discussion has to include people that will say, well, wait a minute. What about Boots Ennis? Which was exactly what you said to me before we started the show. Well, what about Boots? Terrence Crawford is never going back to 147. Mark my words. Unless it's for an Errol Spence level fight, it's not happening. And if you have seen Terrence around town at various sporting events, enjoying himself, being very visible, he's big. Folks, he's a big dude. He is not going back to 147. Should he try to wait out somebody at 154? Who is there to wait out? If he waits for the winner of Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman, he's not going to get in the ring until June, July. That's a long time. That means that Bud Crawford will have had his greatest achievement and then sat out for a year, which that is not Crawford's style. He doesn't fight. He doesn't fight a super accelerated schedule, but I'm sure that he never imagined that he'd be sitting on his ass for a year. So if you look at it, you may not love it, but it does make a lot of sense. And financially, especially if there is a notion of doing this fight in the UK, it pencils out. See what happens.
Your reaction to the latest regarding Crawford and Belanga, Daniel?
Berlanga and Daniel Jacobs, not Crawford. Daniel Jacobs.
That's what I was saying,
The
Daniel. Your reaction to the latest news regarding Crawford and Berlanga.
Gotcha. Okay. I thought Daniel Jacobs. I think Daniel did too.
Yeah, in that area. Yeah, because I'll tackle Berlanga first. Okay, it's serviceable.
And yeah, because I have nothing. Berlanga and Daniel Jacobs. I got nothing. Nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
It's serviceable because you're trying to rebuild Berlanga. Yeah, you're trying to rebuild Berlanga, and Jacobs is at the point of his career where if he's gonna do anything, he's gonna be a gatekeeper. So it's a good fight to rebuild Berlanga and to see somebody that has been actually world caliber fight. If he doesn't do good against Dan Jacobs, that should give Eddie Hearn the out that he needs to say, like, you know what, you may not be worth waiting for me to get back to Canelo. That's the Berlanga front. The Bud front, okay, I'll say this. Is this a response to the fact that we had Pacquiao do a face-off with Conor Benn? Because, I'm sorry, between Conor Benn and Eubanks Jr., they keep trying to out-clown each other in certain manners. But when it comes to Bud, I can understand why he would do it. It's a big money fight. Obviously, your last fight with Spence should have gotten you like a bigger fight where it would have been Mel, but we know what happened to Mel. Or try to stay within at 147, but that's the tricky part. Gail mentioned it. Bud's pretty big guy for his weight, even though he keeps himself in shape. He's never had camps where it's just been just to cut weight drastically. But he's a pretty big guy for 147. And having him wait, even though I do want to believe that he should have been able to defend all 4 belts at least once. Something I think he wasn't able to do at 140. If he would have had the chance to do so, it would have been nice to do it against somebody like Boots. But he may not physically be able to make it. And that does open up a different avenue to open fights. If you can't wait on Mel, and if you can't go through the WBA route and get Madrimov into a different fight because it probably won't cater to the money, but it'll get him a belt. Do you wait until Virgil takes that belt, possibly, for him to make that fight? Because we also have to remember, Bud and Virgil have also been circling each other in different ways. So that is another avenue. It's interesting to see if they can do it. I don't think it can be done with Eubanks because it's hard to trust anything involving Chris Eubank at this stage of his career. But if it does, it's probably going to be a good victory of Crawford. And like we mentioned, and once he switches southpaw, you know it's over.
My concern about Berlanga facing Jacob is that Jacob hasn't had a fight since February 2022. Yeah, that's over 2 years ago. What were we just saying about the importance of activity, the power of staying active, how it benefited both Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker in their great performances last Friday. There is nothing good to be had for Danny Jacobs after having been out of the ring 2 years plus another month, plus however long it takes to schedule this fight. That is somebody being lured out of effective retirement as a gatekeeper. You're right, Daniel, for them to do kind of an eye test of Berlanga. Damn, I get it. It's a name. Daniel Jacobs is still a name to a lot of people, especially if the fight's held in New York. If you got two New Yorkers, I get it. It would sell. I would rather see Edgar Berlanga tangling with your average, solid Mexican opponent. Call someone up in Tijuana. Call them up at Big Punch Arena. Who you got in the weight division? Somebody who's a buzzsaw, and put him in with Berlanga. Sell it as Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Seriously, I would rather see that than see Danny Jacobs. He's had a great career. His comeback from his health issues is an amazing story in itself. I mean, the fact that he even got back in the ring was a miracle, truly. I mean, there's a reason he's called the Miracle Man. Do I need to see this? I get why his name's being floated. I don't need to see this. I don't.
I mean, look, if the end game is to get him in there with Canelo later on this year, there are other guys who are younger, fresher, who you could put him in the ring and he could look good against. He's not going to get anything from beating a Jacobs at this point.
No, he's not going to. He's not. I'm sorry, Gail. He's not going to gain anything other than to show that he's not completely damaged goods. And I just thought of a name, Gail, that if we want to do that route, Montiel.
Okay.
Throw Montiel at him. He can go up to 168. That you can still sell Mexico versus Puerto Rico, and that would be a serviceable fight. But again, that if I'm correct, Montiel is still with PBC in some shape or fashion, and obviously Berlanga's with Matchroom. And we know Eddie and Al do not like the business unless they actually have to.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and so that's the only reason for the Danny Jacobs thing.
With Frank Warren right now.
Yeah.
Now, and who thought we were ever going to say something like that, right? I mean, no kidding. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. We're struggling to figure out who the proper opponents are for somebody like Berlanga. I mean, you look around and you think, well, there's good old Sergey Derevinchenko standing off there in the corner, but I think you'd have trouble with him. I think you'd have a lot of trouble with him. Same thing you just mentioned, doing business with Al kind of leads out somebody like Caleb Plant. He isn't going to go up against a young talent, guys coming on like him. Diego Pacheco would smoke him. Christian Mbili would smoke him. I mean, who else you got? Maybe you put him up against Eric Bazinian from Canada. Him too, probably. There's Bektemir Melikuziev, who's had a bit of a shaky road. It's hard to say, where he is. He's definitely not going to face someone like David Morrell against, again, the PBC problem there. So what the hell do you do with him, right? You have somebody floating around there in kind of no man's land in the division like Vladimir Shishkin. He does have a fight scheduled on one of these Wayne State Fieldhouse cards coming up at the end of the month. Do you haul somebody like Jose Uzcategui out? Durrell Brothers? Anybody? Bueller?
Oh God. Okay. Well, no, because Aren't the Durrell brothers were out still? So that takes them out too.
I mean, we got an issue too. And, truthfully, that is a problem because, it just tends to be that certain promoters tend to end up controlling most of the talent in a division. It just kind of the water pools that way, right? It's kind of like, everybody at lightweight, is over at the top rank end of things. In Berlanga, having blown it with top rank, leaves him a bit high and dry for opponents. So I don't know what the hell he thinks he's going to do. So you hear Danny Jacobs. Yeah, I think Jacobs should just say no. I really do. But I get it. I don't love it.
Yeah, that's it's one of those things. It's always one of those things where I understand it. I know what's being thrown out there, but we know what this is, unfortunately, when it comes to Berlanga. And I'll be honest, anything that keeps Berlanga out of the ring, away from Canelo, is good for the sport at this stage. Because if you take Berlanga out of that stage, you can put more pressure for September to be Benavidez. Because now with the Munguia fight being official, there is officially no excuse for Canelo Alvarez not to face David Benavidez in September.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I don't like either Berlanga or Jacobs or Crawford or Eubank. I hate to sound so pessimistic doing this. It's not tonight's episode. Given the ball fight with Vargas, given this news development here, it's just I just think there's better out there for both men, um, both Crawford and Berlanga. But it is what it is. This is boxing. In 2024, neither guy at this point has the greatest. They do have options, but context is critical here. It is what it is with both men. Let's move on to preview some fights here. One fight in particular. Update everyone. Is it for sure that the Marlon Esparza fight has been pushed back due to visa issues from Alanis?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's focus on what is the main event of that card. I'm talking the upcoming fight card this weekend in Las Vegas on the Zone Golden Boy promoted event. WBA IBF eliminator Gale between William Zepeda and Maxi Hughes. Now Zepeda, he's been ripping it up, particularly in the West Coast area scene at 135. Came on the scene a couple of years ago and is like, who is this dude? As he's been running through and destroying cats. Fights of Maxi Hughes, who many people felt beat George Kambosos when they fought a summer last year. The puncher here, the aggressive fighter is Zepeda. Hughes is the boxer, the southpaw. The issue for me: can the 33-year-old Maxi Hughes, does he have anything to ward off a Zepeda? Could he outbox him in theory? Yes. But to me, Zepeda's skills are a little bit underrated, but it's his power and it's a physicality that has plenty of folks talking.
I saw Zepeda for the first time quite a few years ago when he fought who at the time was a very well-regarded prospect of Golden Boys named Hector Tanahara. And that Tanahara fight just blew me away. Zepeda absolutely went through him like a buzzsaw. And Tanahara was undefeated at that point. He was 19-0. He wasn't particularly a knockout puncher, but he was well on his way, and he has never been the same since. That was almost 3 years ago. Since then, Zepeda has just blitzed through his opponents. He has won all but one fight by knockout, and the only fight he didn't win by knockout was the one against Jojo Diaz. And the cards were 119 to 109, if that gives you an idea of how lopsided that fight was. And at the time, Diaz only had 2 losses. So he just continues to rip through anyone put in front of him. He is the forgotten man at 135. And, he could be wringing his hands and whining and crying about his lack of opportunity. No, he just says, put somebody in front of me, set them up, I'll mow them down. And that's what's going to happen this week to Maxi Hughes. Maxi Hughes has 6 losses. He's on the back end of his career. He's been stopped twice. And the work rate of Zepeda, you could read it in the CompuBox stats. You can hear about it. Until you sit there and watch him, it is hard to wrap your head around it. I mean, he is a machine. He has worked. He grew up, lived, trained, works at high altitude outside Mexico City. He isn't the guy that just goes up to high altitude for training camp. And boy, you can see it. And once again, we have a theme in this show. Stay busy. Keep busy. Don't wait around for the perfect fight. Keep in front of the fans. Keep, polishing your resume under the bright lights, no matter who it is. And he's smart to be doing this. It's a good matchup. I expect we'll see exactly the same kind of fight we've seen the last few times that Zepeda's been in the ring. I think his stoppages tend to be not the one-hitter quitters we saw on Friday, but the stoppage by attrition, accumulated damage. I think that's exactly what we'll see. And let's face it, folks, he is pretty much the only game in town. The fight schedule gets a little bit thin in the United States because of the NCAA basketball tournament, aka March Madness, as we all know it. And we have a few nice fights on the undercard. Floyd Schofield is on the card. Eric Priest is on the card. And cruiserweight Tristan Kalkruth is on the card out of Texas. So I'll be happily sitting in my seat watching this. But there's not a whole lot else going on unless you want to try to watch the fights out of Cleveland, in which there is a minor middleweight title, and we've got Dennis Douglas back in the ring, who's had his issues. But that's about it, folks. So it's either that, or you're watching basketball, or it's time to call your grandma.
No. You're in the middle of March Madness, and it wouldn't be wise for the powers that be in boxing to try to compete with that. Right? Back to Zepeda and Hughes. I pretty much agree with what Gail says here. Zepeda, he has one punch power, but kind of old school, in the old school Mexican way. He has an old school Mexican way of just bludgeoning you and punishing you. The kind of guy who will have you urinate blood 2-3 days after the fight because of the way he can destroy you and really punish you with body shots in particular. Feel good story, Maxi Hughes. Back in 2019, he was thinking about hanging up the gloves. He's rebounded. He beat Kid Galahad, worked his way into the fight with Kambosos, get another opportunity, another world title eliminator. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. Getting a win against this young force.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the story of Maxi Hughes. He's one of the definitions of a late bloomer in the sport, because he did have the best parts of his career as he's gotten older. But William Zepeda, man, that kid is a person that, I agree, he's not in love with his power. He has power, but he's not fully in love with it, where he just only relies on that. Where it's not a point of where it said, I'm just going to knock you out in one punch. It's the classic, I'm just going to beat you into submission type of fighter. And that's something that's very, very good to have in this sport, particularly at this stage when it comes to lightweight being as it is at the moment. So I expect Zepeda to pull this out. It'll probably be a good war of attrition. But ultimately, he knows what's at stake. He knows the title picture is pretty open now compared to what it was a year ago in many ways. So, not to mention that the sanction he might be fighting for, it might actually lead him to a very lucrative payday, depending on who it is. And we know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we'll talk about it should he win, because if he wins that eliminator, um, he could end up in a fight with the winner of Loma and Cambosa's for the IBF belt, or he could end up against the winner of Tank Davis and Frank Martin for the WBA belt. So the winner of this fight, world title shot for sure. Or even there's a possibility of him fighting Shakur, uh, over at on the ESPN. And I think we're going to end things on that note. I think Gail all of a sudden left. She may have technical issues. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. Louis Scarpo, what you need for their comments on the live here. If you're checking us out on YouTube, either now or at a later date, make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure to subscribe. And I see that Gail is back. Going to go around the panel here. Gail from nyfights.com for those who want to talk boxing or anything else. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
I'm going to blame it on my dog. It's the dog ate my You find me at nyfights.com, nyfights.com, and I am the recap queen over there. So generally, if a fight card's going on and you want to find someone to chat about it or give me your thoughts, you find me on boxing, Twitter. Yeah, I'm still there.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes. Oh, by the way, folks, Luis Carpio. Yeah, we've gone international, folks. We've crossed the equator. That's my brother, and he's listening from Cochabamba, Bolivia. So.
I didn't know. Shout out to Luis. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, hit that like and that subscribe button, and please share and let folks know about Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will be eternally grateful. Thank you for checking us out.
Yeah, people have to Bolivia is an interesting area when it comes to boxing. It's become probably like the spiritual home of Tim Boxeo in a lot of ways when it comes to some of the cards that he puts on. But as far as the socials go, same on Twitter, same on Threads, Spoutable, Mastodon, Blue Sky. Got to cover all the bases in case Elon nukes this thing. Rocks99, RWKZ99. Definitely catch me on there. And it might be a little bit dry in the American shores, but I think we're going to pick things up on the international front to make up for the lack of domestic boxing in the sport.
Indeed. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is on Twitter, because as always, I refuse to call it X. Brother JR at Brother JR76 for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and all things fragrance, including check out my scent of the day for my fragrance heads on IG. And for now, TikTok, because it looks like TikTok is in threat of ending as well. Please check me out in that avenue. Brother JRSC. On the next episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, we will do a recap of Zepeda and Maxi Hughes again. That is a WBA IBF world title eliminator. As Gail mentioned, Floyd Schofield is fighting on the undercard. Victor Morales in a 10-round bout. Schofield fighting in a 10-round lightweight bout. We may cover that. We'll likely cover one, if not both of those fights. We'll also preview interesting card over in Sheffield, England. That's going to air on the Zone as Sheffield's own Dalton Smith fighting arguably the toughest fight of his career. No, arguably to it. I think it is going to be the toughest fight of his career against former world title challenger Jose Zepeda. That's going to be a 12-round junior welterweight bout on the undercard. Um, very good bout. Very good women's title fight. Terry Harper, 2 division champion at 130, recent champion, recent champion at 154 pound. She's moving down to 147 to face WBO women's welterweight champion Sandy Ryan. For those who do not remember, Sandy Ryan fought Jessica McCaskill in her last bout. I felt she beat McCaskill that night, so she's running it back, fighting Harper, which should be a very good women's world title bout. So we will cover those 2 bouts, preview those 2 title bouts as well. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. Shout out to Daniel's brother, Luis Carpio. Shout out to What You Need. Again, thank you for your comments. This has been episode 438 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel for 4 Boxing News and the Inscriber Podcast. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.